It's Moomin time. I gotta be honest with you folks, 2020 has definitely been, a year. In times like these, it's nice to go back to books and shows that bring you comfort. The Moomins definitely do that for me, as I'm sure they do for lots of people. I think it's part of why the series has remained so relevant throughout the ages. And the Moomins themselves have gone through their share of dangerous times too. If you take the first book of the series, for example, the valley life as we know it only became a reality as the Moomin family sought refuge from a flood, a fact that is even referenced in the Moominvalley adaptation opening. Honestly, if you look at the amount of stuff these characters go through, it kinda feels like they can never catch a break.
One of the things that we were talking about was that Moomins are always reacting to something terrible happens, or the comet, or the flood, or whatever. It has some kind of a hint that if you think that the world will stay the same in a way, then something happens.
The same can be said for the Moominvalley adaptation. Throughout its seasons, the characters have had to deal with several threats to their home and lifestyle, usually brought upon by forces of nature. Whenever that happens, each character has a different way of dealing with the situation, and no episodes illustrate this better than the Lighthouse arc from Season 2. So I thought we could take a look back at the string of events and see how each member of the Moomin family copes with their new situation. Of course, this automatically helps me cope with my own reality by throwing myself into the Moomins rabbit hole. But maybe we can even learn a lesson or two. How can the Moomins teach us to deal with hard times? Let's find out together. Because once again, I want to talk about Moominvalley. What I am hereby nicknaming the Lighthouse arc is a sequence of episodes in the Moominvalley series that is mostly based on a novel Moominpappa at Sea from the Moomin books, but of course spawn into the bigger narrative that is this current adaptation. In this arc, Moominpappa grows dissatisfied with his current life and feels like it's time for a change, prompting the family to leave the valley in search of an island equipped with a lighthouse. The characters have a hard time adapting to their new surroundings and even consider returning to the Moominvalley. But it turns out a storm has washed away their boat, and now they have no choice but to stay and make amends with their current situation. Each family member has their own challenges to overcome, and their ways of coping with their predicament. In this video, I am going to explore the journey that each character goes through during this arc, looking into their progress and the lessons they have learned. Part 1. Moominpappa. Moominpappa can be considered the catalyst for this adventure, since he was the one who first decided to leave the valley. Throughout seasons 1 and 2, you could see he had an audacious spirit, dreaming of going through perilous journeys and abandoning the easy life he had been so accustomed to. His wife was usually able to subdue those wishes, taking him through downsized versions of his ambitions, such as going camping for the weekend instead of fully rejecting civilization, and that seemed to do the trick. This time, though, he has grown too restless for that, and the only way to solve that issue was to pursue a new life somewhere else. He picks an island he had already been dreaming about, thinking of becoming the new keeper of its lighthouse, and takes his family along with him. When he gets to the island, however, his illusions of grandeur are shattered as he has an incredibly hard time settling in, struggling to make furniture, unable to fish, and most importantly, being absolutely incapable of lighting up the lamp in the lighthouse. This comes as a hard blow for him because the real reason why he came to the island was that he wanted to be relevant.
I thought I would be needed here.
Part of why he felt so restless at the valley was because he no longer felt challenged by his current lifestyle, and because his family was able to get everything done by themselves. The seasons kept on changing and the world kept on spinning, but he could control none of it. He was no more essential than any other member of his family, and nothing else made him feel important. The island represented a chance to get a fresh start and feel like an actual leader again, flaunting his homesteading skills and providing a light for those who were lost at sea. Instead, his furniture fell apart at his feet, his jetty was blown away by the storm, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make the lighthouse shine. As he attempted to leave the valley, he claimed that they would be leaving their troubles behind them, to which little Mai remarked that troubles were not so easy to get away from. In the case of Moominpappa, this appears to be true, because the same frustrating feelings of uselessness that plagued him on the valley continued to haunt him in this new environment. The family's location might have changed, but their troubles remain the same. After they become stranded, Moomintroll suggests that his father should allow himself a little more time to get used to the island and truly find his calling. Moominpappa decides to study and explore his surroundings, and it seems to bring him a new sense of purpose. He gathered notes on the sea and its currents, ventured into the rocky pool by the house, and found immense success in fishing. Still, he could not make the lighthouse's lamp ignite. Even though he was getting better at dealing with his supposed lack of relevance, that remained the one issue he could not move past. The answer only comes once he turns to the former keeper of the lighthouse in search of guidance, admitting that he can't make the lamp function. The keeper lights up the beacon and the family finally finds peace. Here, we see that Moominpappa's biggest troubles related to how he felt like his family didn't need him as much as they once did, and that his spirit had been somewhat lost in the process. He dreamed of becoming a leader, a rock for the others to lean on. But those things don't come easily, and expecting immediate success in a new situation would only lead to more disappointment. It takes time for him to find his ground in this strange environment, and even if he eventually has a much easier time finding a new sense of purpose, there are still things he can't do on his own. He has to come to terms with the fact that it's okay to ask for help, especially from people who are great at dealing with the challenges that trouble you, as they can help you overcome the obstacles you can't beat by yourself. Part 2. Moominmamma. Moominmamma has always been good at dealing with her husband's whims, and she does it so calmly and expertly that it seems like she's quite used to doing it. She's always there to support him in his endeavors and calm his spirits when he starts getting too restless. This time, however, there's no amount of camping that can make Moominpappa calm down. She agrees to go with him to the island, understanding that this is something her husband really needs, and she even explains to the kids that sometimes it's best to change things up before you start taking them for granted. Throughout the series, Moominmamma has been characterized as a caring, resourceful individual, one that could turn any place into a home. Moominpappa gives her the task of doing so in the lighthouse too, letting her be in charge of their new living quarters. She tries her best to turn this gray, decaying lighthouse into a place the family can be happy to live in, but she is struggling. Not only that, she understands her husband is not as sure of himself as he had hoped to be by this point, and she doesn't know how else to lift his spirits. Her biggest problem, however, is that she misses the valley. She wasn't ready to leave it and only did it because she knew it would be best for Moominpappa, but if it was up to her, the family would have stayed there. She gets excited at the idea of returning, but realizes this won't be possible as the sea washed their boat away, stranding them on the island. As her husband finds a new purpose in his studies, she also looks for ways of coping with her situation and ends up finding solace in painting. Her murals depict the valley she had to leave behind, with all of its colors and flowers. Even if painting brings her comfort, though, it also makes her very aware of how badly she misses her old life. When she finally talks about it with Moominpappa, he is very dismissive of her feelings, saying that she shouldn't dwell on the past. She can't connect to her new life and can't find support in her family. She has always been the one to comfort her loved ones, but now she can't find the strength to do it, and there's no one who understands her longing. Therefore, she turns to painting, And the more she does it, the more her murals come to life before her very eyes. She starts to, quite literally, get lost in her work, daydreaming of the garden she could have if they were still back home, of tidying up the house, of once again living among greenery and sunshine. Reality is no longer enough. During a night of heavy fog, though, she hears her family calling out for her, and she realizes she still needs to be there for them. The problem is that by that point, she's gone too deep inside her paintings, and her colorful daydreams fall apart around her as she tries to leave them, threatening to keep her lost for good. She escapes from her imaginary world by painting a hatch that leads into the lighthouse, this time using her art to bring her back to reality instead of keeping her away from it. By doing so, she is able to signal out to her family and bring them back home. Unlike Moominpappa, who was actively trying to get away from his problems, Moominmamma didn't have an issue she was so blatantly trying to outrun. Her troubles relate more to how she was perfectly happy in the valley, but had to leave it because it was best for her family. And now there's no one who can relate to her sacrifice. Although she felt even more desolate when her husband told her not to dwell on the past, there is some truth to Moominpappa's words. Sometimes we are thrown into terrible situations we can't get out of, and it makes us miss the good times we had before this whole mess started. Avoiding reality like that, however, won't bring us any useful solutions, and will instead only make us feel more lost and hopeless. It is Moominmamma's love for her family that allows her to pull through, for she realizes they still need her and that she can still be there for them. The lighthouse becomes a home for her simply because her family already considered it so, and a life where she can be together with them is the only one that can bring her happiness. Part 3. Moomintroll. Although the lighthouse arc ties into Moomintroll's bigger path of growth across the season, he also goes through his own journey of self-discovery once his family moves. He is initially against leaving the valley, attempting to move in with his friend Snorkmaiden, but he soon realizes that he's not ready to leave his family, and sets off along with them. Upon first glance, you could argue that Moomintroll is a lot like his father. He dreams of partaking in amazing adventures, and he wants to be seen as a confident, remarkable individual. Aside from that, he also has a problem he is very deliberately trying to get away from, even if it follows him all the way to the lighthouse. If you give it a bit more thought, however, you could see that he is actually a lot more like his mother. He loves his home and doesn't want to part with it. He enjoys his comfortable, colorful life and hopes it doesn't have to change. He also loves very deeply and has a hard time letting go. A life with his family is actually his best shot at being happy. As they become stranded on the island, he has to step into his mother's shoes and comfort his family, lending a hand to his mother as she grieves over the loss of her garden, and convincing his father of pursuing his instincts and finding a new adventurous purpose. He is actually fairly good at dealing with change here, which is surprising, considering how poorly he has coped with the subject on all other times he had to leave the valley behind. This time, he is the one who motivates the rest of his family to deal with their new surroundings, and is even surprised at the idea that his father had considered returning.
But I thought we were here for good.
Still, the island life doesn't stop him from living life as he usually would, hanging around his family, taking some nature strolls, and falling madly in love with a horse. Okay, maybe that part's new, but the idea of Moomintroll falling head over heels for someone else isn't all that surprising. During his first night on the island, Moomintroll encounters a horseshoe in the sand, and he later discovers that it belongs to one of the seahorses that roam the beaches at night. He has a few encounters with them, and they're initially pretty mean to him, but Little Mai teaches him some tips on how to deal with girls, and he is able to grab their attention. As the seahorse is pushed away by his aloof act, though, he snaps out of it and breaks into song, spewing all his fluttering, sugary feelings at her, and it actually wins her over. What's interesting here is that as the seahorses taunt him, they tease him over how desperately he dreams of them, and how he might as well just keep on waiting forever.
Do you love us? Wait for us forever!
Now, we all know Moomintroll is kind of intense when it comes to love. His feelings for the seahorses develop quite rapidly, and they have a kind of summer romance vibe to them. They feel real, but we all know it's temporary. At first, it looks like his usual overdramatic self won't get him very far, and he only starts to connect with his target once he begins to act distant. But he simply cannot help being himself, which is actually what wins the girl over. They seem to spend some quality time together and even enjoy each other's company. But the seahorse is driven away by the Groke's arrival and is never seen again. As I have already discussed in a previous video, the Groke can be seen as a representation of the troubles Moomintroll was trying to outrun, specifically his possessive tendencies when it comes to the nature of love. In the island, Moomintroll overcomes this fear by turning the Groke away, claiming that he doesn't have time for those feelings anymore. With that, his parents notice how much their son has changed and allow him to take off on his own. Moomintroll didn't struggle as much with this new situation as one might expect. This might come from a sense of personal growth, but it can also be from how he has experienced so many threats to his lifestyle at such a formative age that he's becoming kind of used to dealing with it. Either way, it's this new environment that allows him to try to grow closer to the seahorses, as if he has taken this opportunity to explore who he is and truly craft his identity. Even though he succeeds at first, he's still troubled by his own emotionally possessive tendencies, and he has to let them go before he can pursue any sort of relationship with the intensity he usually loses himself to. I mean, either that or he's really just a horse girl. Even though this island lifestyle didn't affect him as negatively as it did his parents, he is still changed by it in ways that will affect him for the rest of his life. Part 4. Little My. When Moominpappa grows restless over his life on the valley, Little My claimed that he was angry in the wrong way.
Bottling it up inside.
Little My, on the other hand, has always been known for doing the opposite. She always speaks her mind, be it through snarky remarks or through pieces of advice. Because of that, she carries no major troubles with her, and wasn't trying to outrun anything as she left the valley. Her life on the island is defined by trying to unravel the mystery of what happened to the previous lighthouse keeper, all while befriending a fisherman who lives nearby. She has a much easier time adapting, to the point where it feels like her life has barely changed at all. This can come from how she's always had to fight for her own space, given how she's grown up surrounded by younger siblings, and ended up learning how to cope with any sudden predicament. The only grievance she carries is her apparent resentment over being neglected by her mother, which results in a fear of being abandoned.
You'll never be abandoned again. This is your home, and we will always love you.
Stop talking, or I'll bite you.
But here, she runs no risk of that happening, because she gets to be with her family. Since she has no problems of her own, she finds a distraction in solving other people's problems, such as helping the fisherman make peace with his troubled past and help the family like the beacon. Her own stability helps other people achieve theirs, and ends up bringing the whole family together. But I couldn't move on without talking about another incredibly important character. You know him from his iconic green hat, his ragged coat, his unparalleled musical abilities, and most importantly, his loner tendencies. I am, of course, talking about the fisherman. Part 5. Yes, the fisherman, please stick with me here. As the Moomin family arrives at the island, they run into a fisherman on a boat rowing into the opposite direction, warning them to stay away. They choose to ignore his words and sail into the island anyway. Turns out he lives on the island too, but prefers to keep to himself. He struggles to interact with others and believes he's better off that way. Little Mai is the one who reaches out to him, though he is initially against opening himself up. She eventually figures out that he was the former lighthouse keeper, but gave up on his job because no one was there to see his light, and he saw no point in keeping it up if he couldn't reach out to anyone. Much like the Moomin family, he also has a problem that chases him. Even though he has retired to the rocky island shores, his past as the keeper still haunts him, as he feels like giving up on that job also made him lose his identity. He's had to get so used to loneliness that, even when he doesn't have to be alone anymore, he still shuts other people out, because he has forgotten how to let them in. His issues are mostly resolved as he helps Moominpappa light up the beacon, letting himself bond with other people and accepting the part of himself he once tried to deny, the part that craves to be acknowledged. But I would be lying if I said the fisherman's journey is completely different from Snufkin's, since Snufkin also struggles with those same concepts. It is possible to see the fisherman as a cautionary tale of what Snufkin could become if he keeps shutting other people out. He runs the risk of having his light never be seen again, and of forgetting how to let other people in. But I digress. Either way, we see that our connections are what keep us grounded even in times of struggle. And even when loneliness takes over, one is never so far gone that they can't be welcomed back in. Part 6. Identity. When the Moomin family heads towards the lighthouse, the fisherman warns them that they must turn back at once, otherwise the island can cause them to become lost. It would be, admittedly, very hard to get lost on the island because it is pretty small. No, what the fisherman meant was that they might become lost in the sense of losing their identity. When they get to the shore, they set up camp by the beach in order to explore the lighthouse in the morning. During the move, Moominmamma loses her handbag as it becomes buried in the sand. This bag has been her main accessory, aside from her apron, and like any good mother's handbag, it is filled with everything and anything a person might need. It is versatile, resourceful, and a source of comfort, much like Moominmamma herself. Losing her handbag also means losing this part of herself, the part that was able to turn any place into a home, and to bring stability to those who need it, which is her biggest struggle in building a new life on the island. Moominpappa, on the other hand, has been characterized by his top hat, but he switches it for a battered green hat he finds in the lighthouse. Much like Moominmamma with her bag, the top hat symbolized Moominpappa's old life, and he abandons it in favor of a new one. But his new hat doesn't belong to him, much like the duty of lighthouse keeper isn't the answer to finding himself. The green hat actually belongs to the fisherman, and Moominpappa gives it back to him as the keeper gets to know the family better, helping them light the beacon, showing us that he had finally made amends with his past and reclaimed the part of himself he had once denied. As for Moominmamma, she finds the bag in the sand as she sees Moomintroll getting ready to leave on his own adventure, just as Moominpappa puts on his old top hat back, because they have finally found themselves again. The fisherman's warning came from how he felt like he had lost himself on the island, since he had tried to distance himself from his place as the lighthouse keeper. And while it is true you can feel like you have lost yourself when thrown into a new situation, it won't be long until you find yourself again. Part 7. Conclusion. The Moomins are a family that is constantly dealing with new situations. During the episodes of the Lighthouse arc, we have seen how each character copes with being thrown into a strange and scary predicament. The lessons they learn apply to their specific situations just as they can help us recognize and deal with our own troubles. We must understand that it's okay to ask for help, and that helping others might also bring you the stability you seek. Dwelling too much on the past might hinder you from dealing with the present, but the present can also be dealt with thanks to the tools that bring you comfort. You can take this moment to redefine yourself or to help others through their own journeys. But the most important thing is that you give yourself time to adapt and to find yourself anew. Even when all seems hopeless, it is through uplifting each other that we can learn how to uplift ourselves.
It's like Tove said that I want to have happy endings.
Yes, yes.
And the happy ending comes through caring. The characters care for
we
each
have
other.
each other in the end, really.
Yeah.
The Moomins are a series that brings me joy, and that I feel I will always return to. These are characters who have taught us about love, change, bonds, independence, and even how to deal with terrible times. We might feel as if a happy ending is still far from coming true, but if I have learned anything from this series, is that we must take care of each other and give ourselves the time and permission to deal with whatever comes our way. Thank you for watching. Well, hello there. It was very nice of you to watch this video. If you have enjoyed the video, you can do those cool things such as clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell too. You can also follow me on Twitter and share this video with your friends. If you really like what I do, you should consider supporting me on Patreon. I have linked it down in the description and I highly recommend you check it out. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if it is about how much you love the Moomins. Every single day I worked on this video was a day that made the world seem even crazier, so I need this kind of content more than ever, and I feel like a lot of people need it too. I hope my videos can bring you all even a fraction of the joy that the Moomins bring me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye! My newest hot take is that the Moominvalley Lighthouse arc and the movie The Lighthouse happened in the same universe.
Even the birds can't make it work here.